Hello. First off, I want to thank everybody for watching my video. In this video, we will be discussing chess. The rules of chess, how to play chess, and how to determine a winner and loser in the game of chess. To me, in my opinion, chess is the greatest board game there is. To give a little bit into my background, my grandfather taught me how to play chess when I was a child. Him and I used to spend countless hours playing and arguing, and as I grew older to learn the rules better, find out he was actually cheating most of the time we played. So may he rest in peace. Today, before we get started, we have to discuss the pieces themselves. So without further ado, let's start going down in order from most significant to least significant of the chess pieces, how they interact, how they can move on the board, and essentially where they go. I will show you how to stack the board at the very end to start a new game. So our first piece, the king. You can distinguish the king by the cross on his head. There's only one king per side. So you have a black side with one king, and you have a tan side with one king. The king is essentially the most important piece on the chessboard, as you would expect to be in greater society, the king being the most important. The king, however, is very limited in his ability to move. The king is limited to moving in one space in any direction. What essentially that means is he can move backwards, diagonally, horizontal, forward, and diagonal one space. So essentially all around him in one movement. The king can take out and kill any other opposing piece he wishes. He cannot jump over pieces. He cannot move through pieces. The king being very limited in his movement, it's very crucial to protect him. The winner or the loser is the winner and the loser of chess is determined by who does the worst job protecting their king. Moving right along, we have the queen. The queen, much like the king, is the only one on the board. So there only being two queens, one per each side on the board. The queen is arguably, without a doubt, the most powerful piece on the board because she has the ability to move as many places as she wants in any directions as she wants. So as you can see here, she's much like the king. She can move in any direction, an unlimited amount of spaces. So she can move diagonally, backwards, diagonally, sideways, and diagonally, along as forwards. The queen can't move, for instance, like this. She can't go like this and like that. She has to stay in one line. So imagine a straight line. The queen being the most powerful piece is a piece utilized by players the most, is particularly newer players really lean heavily on their queen. And you'll notice that a lot of guys, when they do lose their queen, they essentially become hampered, and that's when they start to really lose. Okay, moving right along to their next power piece is the bishop. The bishop is considered a power piece for the fact that he can move much like the queen can diagonally as many places as he chooses to move. Unlike the queen and king, however, there are two bishops, making four bishops on the board, two for each team. You could see here, he can move diagonally in as many directions as he wants. Whatever box he starts off on is the box he has to finish on, and stay on. So this bishop can essentially only stay on the dark boxes. So he can only move diagonally in the dark boxes. Much like the queen and king, he can kill any opposing member of the team that stands in his way. He can't go through people. He can't jump over people. And he can take anybody out. Moving right along to our next piece, and is the knight. The knight's probably the coolest piece because it is what you would expect to see a knight riding, a horse. The knight is probably the most interesting piece on the chessboard because he has the ability to move sideways in a way, and I will describe that movement right now. The knight, much like a horse, can jump over things. The knight can as well on the chessboard. The knight is limited to this movement, however. He can move in an L shape 2 by 1 or 1 by 2. So for instance, he can move 1, 2, 1. That's a forward movement to the left. Here is a forward movement to the right. 1, 2, 1. He can do the same motion backwards. 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 1. On top of 1, 2, 1, he can also do 1, 2, 2. So that motion would look like 1, 1, 2. 1, 1, 2. He can do that backwards as well. So 1, 1, 2. 1, 1, 2. Unlike other pieces, the knight, like I said, can jump other pieces, and like any other piece on the chessboard, he can kill any piece he chooses to. The knight can be one of those pieces you have to watch out for when you play, just from his rapid movement. Our next piece is the rook. The rook is much like the opposite of the bishop. The rook can essentially only move straight and sideways. So he starts here. He can move straight forward, straight back, to the right, to the left. He can't jump over other pieces like the knight can, and like every other piece, he can kill any piece he chooses to on the board. The rook is, for new players, a popular piece because of his simple movements. It's easy to control. Last but not least is the pawn. The pawn is the least significant piece on the board, and as you can see from my opposing team, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pawns. Pawns are very limited in what they can do. Essentially, they can only move one place, except on their first move. So the pawn, on his first move from start line, that being the start line, can move 2 places forward. 1, 2. After moving those 2 places, the pawn can only move forward 1 place. The only exception to his movement, however, is when he goes to take out an opposing team's piece. The pawn can kill any piece he chooses, but he has to do so in a diagonal motion. That is how you would take out that piece. Now, if the pawn runs into another piece, say he moves from here to here, he's essentially stuck until one of the other pieces takes that pawn out. The pawn can be a crucial piece towards the end of the game, because if you're able to march your pawn all the way to the other side of the board, you can be granted another queen. Okay, now that we've gone over all the pieces, I'm going to show you how to set up the board, how I usually like to set it up, starting with the pawns. We're going to essentially put our pawns on the front line, as you would expect in a real battle. The most expendable pieces go up front, followed by the rooks. The rooks go on either corner on the backside. Next is the knights, followed by the bishops. Now, the king and queen are a little unusual. Usually how I play is the opposing side's king and queen are always reversed. So it's hard to see on this board, but here is my opposing player. Here is his queen, and here is his king. So essentially we're going to do the reverse. We're going to put king facing queen, queen facing king. Now to start off the game, just like I showed in the movements, there are ways you can do it. You can move here, that's how you start. Your opposing team moves. Maybe you move this guy. Maybe he decides to kill this piece. You lose this piece, he goes off the board. Next move, you may go 2 here, not thinking. Here's the move everybody likes to do. Use the pawn to take out a power player. You might fire back. You can see the game progresses pretty quickly. Power pieces, like I said, are kind of stuck in if they have anything in their way. So essentially, these two pieces, along with the king, really, or excuse me, these two pieces really can't move because they have other players in their way. So maybe they clear out, get this in there, you know, move him around. All right. We're going to quickly discuss how to finish the game. Finishing a game of chess involves setting up a condition where the opposing team can no longer move their king. Once the king is trapped and there's a threat to his life, that essentially is called a checkmate and it's over. Like I said before, this is a rook. So say this rook ended up down here facing that king. That puts him in check. No matter what this player wants to do, he has to get his king out of check. That may involve blocking the check that blocks the threat, or simply move out of the way. You're not in check anymore. The idea of it is to get the king in checkmate to where he has threat and he's trapped. One of my favorite moves, checkmates, involves two rooks, or a rook and a queen. Essentially what you do is by bringing this rook down here, this king is trapped in the sense that he can't move forward anymore. Simply slide your other rook down here, and that would be checkmate. There's pressure on the king, and he cannot move in any other direction without having pressure on him from the other king. That is essentially how chess is played. It's a lot more complicated, guys. I hope you try to take it up. It's a great game, and I'd like to thank you for watching my video. Goodbye.